whatever viewers they led to the program opened, and you could tell that Tony was salivating. They blew off the pyro. Excrement said, "It's Friday night," and then all of a sudden, like Mussolini and Bruiser Brody, they didn't wait. They got right to it. Here's the music. Here's the people. It's clobbering time. Remember what we discussed last week? Because last week it was Punk and Garcia, right? This is getting normal. It's getting normal. The 2 months ago, people didn't know whether they were ever going to see CM Punk in a wrestling ring again. And 2 months later, we're seeing him in cold matches against mid-card guys every week on free TV. There wasn't anything wrong with this as a match, but it's getting normal. And that's the last thing they need to happen. A win or two to show the people he still had it. Thing with Darby was good. Thing with Hobbs was good. Garcia worked because he had 2 heel stooges at ringside to help get the heat. And it's a heel he's working with and blah, blah, blah. He made it plausible. But a lot of people may be going to say, well, you said MJF ought to have wins every week for the first 3 months on TV. Yes. You give a guy repeated wins to get him over. If he comes in as over as he's ever going to be, the reverse is true. Then you keep it special. Even if it's always good, it's not always good for you. Punk has a good way, especially at the start of this match, of putting a lesser guy's shit over and then showing that he was surprised by it, but he can deal with it now that he knows that it's going on. Right? You know what I'm saying? Kind of like, oh, wow, the kid's firing up here. That kind of attitude. Jerry Lawler could do it as a heel on his TV matches. When he was a heel, they just give him 10 minutes on Memphis TV every Saturday morning. Whoever it was with, he would have a good match. He'd have a competitive match, but the attention would always be on him. The focus always on him. He would keep it about him. Even when he was getting the shit kicked out of him, you were still watching him. And he was always in control. He had that vibe. With Punk, he can do that very well with his body language and his facials, but it's harder when you're doing it as a babyface because you can't be cocky and condescending and turn into a heel. But he did it a little bit early here. And then, Matt Sydal's a good talent. He had the horrible debut where he fucking tried to do that thing off the top in that battle royal and just crashed and burned, and it was so embarrassing. He's a good talent. He's a good worker. He's painfully small, but he's good and he's in shape. But he's been presented as a middle card guy. And so, again, as this went on, Punk was trying to have a good match with Matt Sydal and show everything that Matt Sydal can do, but it ended up giving him too much. And with commercial free, they had 20 solid minutes, including the entrances. So Punk couldn't kick the shit out of Matt Sydal that whole way. Sydal had to have some offense. Sydal's a babyface, so Punk couldn't, like I said, use the heel stooges and interference like with Garcia. So he did what he could by having a good match, but booking CM Punk to wrestle a mid-card babyface for 15 minutes bell to bell on TV this early in his run and this competitively was a mistake. They're fucking with the golden goose. And honestly, I said last week, well, they've obviously put Punk against Garcia for the ratings, and some smartass on Twitter was kind enough to chime in, well, it didn't work because the ratings still went down. I said, well, they're trying. I didn't say they were succeeding. That was what that was about, Punk versus Garcia, and that's what this is about. CM Punk wrestling on television should do ratings, but you can't just have CM Punk versus Tits McGee. One time you can, because then the first time they were like, oh shit, Punk's back. We didn't know this was going to happen. His first match, anybody will watch. It doesn't matter who it is. But then after that, now they know he's around. Now they want to see him involved in something. Now they want to see him against a top guy. He's shaking off the ring rust. Now people can see through this. Well, I get to see CM Punk wrestle on television, but I don't know that I've ever wanted to beat the doors down to see CM Punk wrestle Matt Sydal. So I guess I can miss this because we know he'll probably be back next week. That's the way that fans get. And so at that point, they're fucking with the golden goose, and they're getting diminishing returns because it's too normal and it's happening too often. They had a good match, but it was not only just competitive, Sydal was ahead. I mean, at one point I thought maybe Matt Sydal can pull this off, which is the wrong thought to have at this stage of the game when you've got a money-drawn attraction that you're trying to take care of. There was a couple of spots I liked. They both fought on the top rope and then both punched each other and took a double bump to the floor at the same time. Why haven't we seen that before? That actually makes sense. Punk gave Sydal a scoop slam on the apron, which if you have to do something on the apron, that's the safest thing I've ever seen anybody give somebody on the apron. These reverse Hurricane Ranas and Death Valley drivers, just a slam. You know exactly where you're putting him. But as I said, finally, at one point, the people were chanting, GTS, go to sleep, go to sleep. I was about to. And then finally, Punk hit the go to sleep out of nowhere. 1, 2, 3. And the summation of this whole thing, and I'll let you give your thoughts, but Excalibur summed the whole thing up. As soon as that 1, 2, 3 happened, Excalibur's exact quote was, CM Punk just barely defeated Matt Sydal. When it should have been, Matt Sydal gave it everything he had, but it just wasn't enough to beat CM Punk. But they don't know who they're trying to get over or how to do it. Your thoughts?
I think you're right. And that's not to say it wasn't a good match, but it wasn't the right match. And I had the same thought as you, and I'm loving Punk's return like you are. It's too much. I liked the Daniel Garcia match. I didn't have a problem with it. When all of a sudden he's again on a Friday night, not even on Dynamite, on Friday night, competitive with Matt Sydal. Nothing against Matt Sydal, except that why is he this competitive against CM Punk right now at this point in both of their careers? Didn't make much sense. If you put CM Punk on there against someone and don't have a competitive match, which may not be what he wants. Maybe he only wants to have competitive matches. But if you have him go on there and beat someone in 5 minutes, hit the GTS, the fans there were going nuts for him. Nuts! And at one point they were ready for the finish and they went a little longer, and then they still popped big for the finish. If he had gone 5 minutes, they would have loved it. Get a promo in there and then get right to Danielson, and there's your half hour against SmackDown. Yeah. But instead we got a really long Punk match, and I liked the match. Nothing against the match, except that it was wrong. But it was a good match otherwise.
The point of a match involving CM Punk and AEW at this stage of the game, yes, there's an element of we need, to try for ratings with the big guns. But at this point, it should be to make a middle card heel look better than he ever has, Powerhouse Hobbs. Or even a baby face that really has some oomph and some following, like Darby Allin, okay. But when we go to Garcia, when we go to Sydal, now it's just to have Punk on television for ratings if he draws them in that position. And that shouldn't be what it is. Like I said, either make CM Punk look good or get him into an angle or an issue or a position, something with some other semi-top talent. That's what you should be using Punk for at this point, but not to elevate middle card guys and just try to plummet for ratings. It's just not, anyway. So
why haven't we gotten him and Ricky Starks? I mean, it was him and Team Taz, and then it led to him and Hobbs. We never got him and Starks.
Well, but also the thing is, some of these things have to be saved if you think that might be a place that you go and stay there and visit and work that deal for all the, Punk and Starks, Punk and this guy, Punk and that guy. Maybe they think it's too soon, but they're going to take the bloom off of it if they have Punk and so-and-so and Punk and this guy and Punk and that guy and Punk and everybody. Then it's not going to be special anymore by the time they get there. I can understand wanting to put Sydal before Starks if you're trying to elevate the opponent, but if you're trying to slowly escalate yourself for opponents from bottom to top, he started with Darby, went to Hobbs, now he's Garcia and Sydal. We're going the wrong way.
You know what he's going to be for Halloween?
What?
Pumpkinhead.